Good afternoon. My name is Peter Anderson. I was asked to give a classroom assessment talk on it, and that's quite a complex topic. I just want to go over certain areas. I'm going to overview what I'm going to be going over. I might go over what the difference between summative versus formative assessment is, what learning targets are, and more specifically what good learning targets are. Going over rubrics and proper do's and don'ts with rubrics. Feedback and a way to give proper feedback, because the feedback is crucial. That's why we use assessment. But the way you deliver feedback is crucial. Then we'll talk about some programs that can be used in assessment. Not all of them, but just a few of them. Basics. I'm going to discuss the difference between summative, which is basically formal tests like we all took, that are used for grading. Formative assessments are used during actual teaching. Hallmark differences. Formative, that's formal and informal process where teachers and students use data collect purposes for informing access and learning. Maybe we need to address some misconceptions. Maybe we need to review some material in the lesson from the previous lesson. Summative, that's formal testing, such as tests we use for grading or MCAS. All right. Summative, again, is that traditional method of assessment. Grades, MCAS, MTEL. Limitations of summative assessment. You discover deficiency in grading after the fact. With any given this potential to cause harm, may result in labeling a student, especially improper labeling. Little opportunity for student self-assessment because you have the information after the fact. Benefits of formative assessment: provide information about student progress sooner, sometimes in real time. Adopt lessons to student weaknesses, and maybe even need to review the previous lessons, or revise the current lesson or revise future lessons. All right, and what you do is review information gaps and misconceptions. Students can be active in the assessment process on formative assessment. I'll give this biology example. For example, let's say we're discussing the circulatory system today. And part of the circulatory system is blood. So we have a student come to the board and write down the 3 types of blood cells. Those are erythrocytes, leukocytes, and thrombocytes. So if the student gets the answer, they know that, or they might just know the more common name: red blood cells, white blood cells, and platelets, which is a good start. Another biology example. Today we're going to talk about the nervous system. And so what we do is we display a image representing a typical nerve cell. We have a student come up and point out the or the axon on the neuron. I'm getting ahead of myself. Then we have another student correctly point out the dendrites on the nerve cell. Key takeaway: formative assessment provides continuing information, and sometimes in real time, not always though. Clear learning targets. Part of the assessment is making sure you have clear learning targets. You have to know what to assess. For example, if you pick up any textbook, I'm sure you can't read what the textbook is. It's a biology. But the point is, I'm just using it as an example of a textbook. And pick any textbook. At the beginning of each chapter, it has a list of learning objectives or learning targets, so the student knows what to focus on. So the student doesn't get distracted by less important details. And informs also, with the learning target, inform the student what the learning target is. And otherwise, the student can focus on minor details at the expense of the big picture. Also, the student can separate fun facts presented by the teacher or the students from the core material. Provide examples. Okay, if write an essay, provide examples of good essays. Also, provide example of poor essays. Also, I think especially helpful is if you have a bad essay and show how to make it better essay. For example, improving your grammar, maybe expanding on the topic, making sure the paragraph is more coherent. A sound design. You need the right type of assessment for the targeted goal. And questions about content clearly presented in the class assigned readings. So if you ask a question like on a test or an informal assessment, make sure it relates to the content. I know like that sounds obvious, but sometimes we forget. Okay. And items, tasks, and rubrics are of high quality. Okay. Get more into that. Test question, we set a balancing sample of questions, like both in the depth and breadth. All right, multiple choice written response. An essay can evaluate factual knowledge. Sometimes it can evaluate reasoning. You can't assess performance though. You might be able to assess some of the background knowledge required for the performance assessment. For example, activities such as repairing an automobile, safely driving, acting, playing musical instruments, or use of laboratory equipment requires the use of performance assessment. Okay, and the other thing is like getting back to biology. Like suppose we're talking about the cell cycle. This is something that can be done with like assess written wise. It doesn't have to be a performance assessment, but at the beginning, let's point out that the students should have the 4 types of the cell cycle. Students will also know the 4 stages of mitosis: prophase, metaphase, anaphase, and telophase. Key takeaway: to make it clear to students what the learning targets are, because that's what we assessed on, and that's what we want them to learn. And use the right method of assessment for specific learning goals for the specific. Rubrics is a scoring guide, list criteria for good, strong, and weak levels of quality. Why use instructional rubrics? Make the expectation teacher very clear. Students will know what is a good project, moderate project, a so-so project. Also what a pro project is. Takes away the guesswork so the students know what the target. And also promotes student understanding of the subject matter. Do's and don'ts. Look at models, provide examples of good, moderate, or poor work. List criteria. Review criteria, like before you present it to the student, maybe have a colleague look at it. Avoid criteria that's too broad. Alright, do a first draft of the rubric and edit it. Try to have no more than 7 criteria. That's the normal cutoff we have. Match criteria to the learning objective. That sounds obvious, but sometimes we forget. And it's usually no more than performance levels. Alright, let's say we have this performance example in biology. The student is actually accurately measured 15 mLs of liquid. The substance being measured is water for this example, but the students are represented as hazardous substances because in future classes they will have more hazardous substances. The learning goals is to select the correct container. Like you need to select the graduated cylinder as opposed to a beaker, and you need to select the right size of graduated cylinder, and you need to measure correctly, like at eye level on the counter. Performance and criteria: you know what a beaker is, and you know what a graduated cylinder is. Select the proper size of graduated cylinder, and to pour the water in. You know what the meniscus is, which is key to getting an accurate reading in the graduated cylinder. And again, reading at eye level, so because if it's read at an angle, you get a wrong measurement. Performance task: the student will select a graduated cylinder rather than a beaker, and we'll pick the smallest of the smallest of the graduated cylinders because that's the most accurate. And slowly pour water. I know slowly is like how slow is slow and how fast is fast. That's subjective. subjective. Rubrics are supposed to eliminate subjectivity. They don't do it completely. However, the demarcation of the student skills anything, that's a good indication that they support it too quickly. Okay. Then reads 50 nails at eye level and reading at the bottom of meniscus. And doing it at on the counter so the fluid doesn't move and they're getting it most accurate measurement. Key takeaway 4: make sure it's clear to students what is good, moderate, and poor work, and sometimes you might have even more categories than that. Feedback. The reason why we have assessments is we give feedback to students. Feedback is not advice. Sometimes you need to give advice. For example, if a student is doing well in biology, you might suggest considering a career in sciences. Nothing wrong with giving advice, but that's not feedback. Praise is good. Also, miscellaneous comments. For example, I have an interest in dolphins, so if a student writes a report on dolphins, I don't mention out like dolphins. Like, granted, it's good to have a report with students, but that's not advice. Effective feedback is specific. Use student-friendly language. Is ongoing. Is timely. Like if they have a formal a major exam that's going to be graded, make sure they get the feedback before that. Otherwise, the horse will escape from the barn. Okay. And what action the students need to take. Biology example. For example, if a student is building a model RNA with different parts that we provide the student, and they make a mistake, it's ineffective to say you're not familiar with nucleotides in the RNA. However, it's more effective if you say that thymine is not an RNA, thymine is a DNA, and your cells found in RNA. That would be specific. Give students clear, specific, and actionable advice. That's the 5th takeaway. And also, provide clear and specific feedback based on clear and specific rubrics based on clear and specific learning objectives. I hope I am clear and specific about that. And yes, that's a pun intended. Technology assessment. There's a lot of software you can use to help out with assessment and teaching. I'm just going to go over a few of them. I'm going to discuss Prezi, Parlay, and Edpuzzle. Prezi. It's in some ways it's like PowerPoint, but except it's like more colorful and more exciting graphics. Although it's a different company, so it's not really PowerPoint. It takes a while to get used to. Meaning like how to write it. Requires a subscription, and sometimes your district will provide it. Sometimes you have to pay for it. Better for shorter presentations. Longer presentations such as this, probably better to use a PowerPoint. Can incorporate a PowerPoint presentation to it if it's a short PowerPoint. And a good way to present learning goals. Parlay is all-powered artificial intelligence-powered instructional platform. Discusses rich text with students. Connect with students remotely. Helps facilitate discussion remotely and also in class. And that's why during the pandemic of 2020, this was helpful. Also helpful if you have snow days, but you're still going to do online classes. It tracks discussion and assesses frequently as students, see if they're paying attention or being active. And you can visually track the student's response. And the dialogue here is student-driven. Parts of it, you can have the library. Some of those are written by the company. Some of them are written by other educators. You can the Polygyny uses AI to create questions, and a written round table can customize criteria. A virtual round table requires students to speak, and speak literally with the voice, mouth. Drawbacks Parlay. No one's good at multitasking, but some people better than others, and you have to do multiple things at once with Parlay. it probably won't be good for younger students like in elementary school, but I'll refer to my colleagues in elementary school. I teach students in middle school and high school, so I'm going to defer to my colleagues in elementary school. Edpuzzle. It can make video clips interactive, and it can rest feedback so it can check comprehension also if you're paying attention. Responses can be collected and assessed. And a variety of topics are available in the library, produced by a network of educators. Can then upload a video or link a YouTube video. Drawbacks is can be difficult to find a good video if there's a lot on the subject, and some of the videos might be very close together, so it's hard to differentiate. Requires technology access at home and fairly sophisticated. Not as easy to ask questions as the teacher in the room. That's what some of the students report. And the N. Okay, thank you for your participation.